Welcome to But Her Lyrics, the show where we delve into the political lyrics of songs I like, songs I wrote, or topics that I think should be a song. I'm Shawna Potter, singer and lyricist for War on Women, and your host. I had the absolute pleasure of spending my Thanksgiving morning chatting with bassist and vocalist for Rainer Maria, Caithlin De Marrais. I saw them play live at Best Friends Forever Fest in Las Vegas in October when I was tagging along and generally bothering Jawbox, and I'm so glad I did. Not only was it a great set, but unless I saw them that day, I don't know if they would have been on my radar as a band to ask to be on the show. I wasn't sure how active they were lately or if they'd give me the time of day, but not only was Caithlin super receptive to talking with me, but what you're about to hear is a really thoughtful reflection on music accessibility, the importance of music at all stages of life, and what it's like to be in a band for 25 years and how things have changed or grown over that time. It's really fascinating. I really like this interview. So quickly, before we get into it, Patreon! Biggest of shout-outs to my Patreon recruits, Pupcakes and Postries, Ronnie Navarro, Nick M, Melissa P. Love you guys. Thank you so much for all your long-standing support. And my meatheads, Ben, Isaias, Russell W, Byron, Bob VV, Pete, and Stefan K. And thank you to everyone who signed up to my Patreon in November. You put me over the edge. You finally gave me over 100 patrons. What an awesome milestone. I'm so appreciative. And this season... Uh-oh, Rosie's trying to get in. Rosie. Come in here, little girl. Silly. Yeah, I'm not hiding from you. I'm doing a podcast. Okay, good girl. You want to lay down? Yeah, lay down. Okay. What am I saying? Oh, yeah. It's an awesome milestone. I'm so appreciative. So just thank you. And this holiday season, if you'd like to support me or my work, but you're already a patron, please consider gifting a Shawna-specific Patreon membership to a friend if you think they would be interested in what I do. Or you can up your monthly membership amount, which you can do at a discount if you buy it annually instead of month to month. So the point is there's lots of options. And please know, patrons get to decide. What about my life or my work do you want to see or hear, right? Message me your requests. And please do not forget about any special benefits your specific membership tier gets you. I might owe you a virtual call, right? We could Zoom, for Christ's sake. And before the end of the year, you can at least expect a tour diary from the upcoming War on Women dates with Voivod and the Anti-Queens, who are, of course, previous podcast guests, so please seek that episode out. That's a fun one. All right, sales pitch over. Thank you for dealing with that. Here's my interview with one of the front people for Rainer Maria, Caithlin De Marrais, almost in progress. Interview time! Rosie.
Who's Rosie?
To your bone. It's my pit mix.
Puppy!
And I did the whole, let her outside and do all the things so that she would be chill right now. And then she's just not chill.
Yeah, that's
all
all
right.
Bone.
To your bone. I'll show you her at the end so I don't
Sure,
mess
we
up my
love
camera.
puppy interruptions.
We do. And anyone that listens to this podcast is familiar with it, so it's fine. Caithlin De Marrais.
Hi, Shawna.
Thank you for joining me on But Her Lyrics. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thanks, Shawna. My name's Caithlin De Marrais, and I have been a longtime member of the second wave Midwest emo band called Rainer Maria, also pronounced Rainer Maria. We take all pronunciations. And right now I am also a full-time music educator in Connecticut Public Schools.
Wow.
Among other things. Those are my two main gigs, obviously.
For sure. We all contain multitudes, of course.
Every person has many selves.
Now, we're here to talk about Rain Your Hand. But before we get into it, I assume that Rain Maria does not consider itself a political band, but how do you view the relationship the band has with politics and social justice issues? Is there one?
I think there's many and has always been since its conception at the beginning, because I came into it as with my interest in the all ages scene that had been developed in Madison, Wisconsin, all ages music space by Kaya and William and some other folks called P is for Punk. And we we had a lot of fun.
That was the name of the space?
That was the name of the collective.
The collective. Okay.
Yeah.
Cute.
So we found spaces to host shows for traveling bands, and we made sure that they were safe spaces, all ages spaces. And we had this network of people, touring musicians at the time, that were coming through, and they knew that they had a place to sleep. We would feed them, and we would do a show. And sometimes that show was in our basement. And in fact, Ron Maria played our first show in our own basement with the band, with several bands, but one of them was The Makeup from Washington, D.C. So we had, we got to know these hot spots of, punk, rock, political folks in different areas of the whole country, because then when we went on tour, they would reciprocate and be like, Reiner's coming through, put them on this bill, or, we'll have them at this house show. So it was like a awesome network. And we were very political in a personalist political sense, but also in what we were creating as an alternative to, the venues that were much more, inaccessible at that time for lots of different reasons.
Rain Your Hand is from your very first album, self-titled album, came out in 97.
Right.
Officially the oldest song to be featured on But Her Lyrics so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's so cool. 1997, what do you remember about writing it? Like, where were you in your head in space and time when you wrote it? And then also, how do you feel about it now? And that's lyrically, that's musically, whatever.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Thank you. Well, I think I put it away for a long time. So coming back to it more recently as an older person, I really appreciate what it meant at the time when we were creating it, and also what it means to me now. So at the time, I was coming from being a dancer. I had some musical training, but very little. I went to a Catholic school where there was no music program, so by the time I got to college, I was like, I need everything. I need all the dance and music that I can get. So I was a dancer, and I came to get to know Kaya and William. They already had a band called Ezra Pound, and that band disbanded, and they decided to ask me to join them. And I had, like I said, very little musical training, but I was very musical. I absolutely, wanted to connect with music as a musician, not only as a dancer and a listener. And also I wrote a lot of poetry. So I felt that there was a space for me. I just had never found my way into it. Mm. So.
And how old were you when you were asked to join?
About 21, 22. So like older as far as like a musician starting out,
right? In
a sense. I'd been a singer. I loved singing in like a church choir or something like that. But so Kaya was like the most amazing encouragement I could possibly want and hope to receive from Kaya's now my BFF totally. But back then, like, really helped me come out of this. I don't know if it was like a fear or some kind of shell, or just basically as a music educator, now I understand I had never worked that muscle. I had never had the opportunity to project my voice, to collaborate with other musicians. I was extremely musical, but I never had worked that muscle. So it was like someone was putting me on the basketball court for the first time and was like, go shoot some
Get
hoops.
in
And I
there,
was
kid.
like, wait, hold on. I've never
You're like, I've
had
dribbled, but I
training.
haven't done
Yeah,
anything
I
else.
love the sport, but I don't know how to access it and play as a team. So, yeah, so that song, we were like, let's write about this memory I had in high school, of being at an all ages space, but it was an all ages dance space because, like I said, I hadn't been able to access being in a band until college. So I would go to these all ages dance clubs and DIY dance spaces in Connecticut. And that's where all the queer kids were hanging out. And that's where all the artistic kids were hanging out. And that's where I felt like my kindred folk were there. So, you know, we were dancing, dancing, dancing. One of the DJs was Moby, actually, when he was a young person.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
was like people who were really into music, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm telling you a whole bunch about myself.
No, I love it because you're actually
Okay.
transporting me back in time because
Yeah.
one of the first hangout spots in my high school years where you could find all the other alternative kids was a place called Rocketown in Franklin, Tennessee. And
Uh-huh.
it was like that's where the goth dance party was. That's where you
Yep.
went to hear Tainted Love. And
Totally.
then sometimes bands would play
Yep.
and then they'd serve everyone pizza and talk about God after midnight, but that's like a different episode, I think, of this podcast. But anyway,
But
like
not
the dance,
dissimilar.
not dissimilar, right. But it's like the
Right.
dance aspect and then the music and like just a place for kids to like go and be
Yeah.
free and like kind of stay out of trouble, but do all the things that we need to do as far as like development and social relationships go. So yeah, right?
Totally. Exactly that. And you know, I had started out going to a place called the Anthrax, which was a hardcore music venue club. And I foolishly went up front wanting to dance, right? And I
Sure.
got smashed. And I was like,
Sure.
this is not my space.
Yeah.
Like I like I like what's happening, but there's no room for me. Like
Yeah.
I'm small and
Sounds familiar.
I'm not a, you know, I don't mosh. So, yeah. So I was like, I got to find a different space. So anyway, so then, you know, this memory of being at one of these spaces and having, like a wonderful experience with my best friend at the time. And, Kaya was like, oh, I love that story. You know, here we are out in Madison also creating these all ages spaces. And it's so fundamental to our development as human beings. Like here, the song has written itself. Like,
Hmm.
let's have, we at the early stages of Rana Maria, it was very much like, let's see what we can have two different melodic lines going through it and two different stories and see where they meet. So that's how that song came together, fusing the eras of our lives at that point.
Now, the lyrics are so sweet, right?
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
said, that they even listening to the song, it transports me back in time.
Oh,
But just I'm right back to crushes,
yeah,
butterflies, new
totally.
relationship energy, you
Yep.
know, what is it? A breath of hesitation. Lyric reference. Oh my
Right.
God, guts me. Um, so how do you see that sweet storyline of these two people finding each other and wondering like, oh, what's next? What are we going to do here? How do you see that tying into all ages spaces and the necessity of those spaces in having those moments?
Those spaces are so crucial and essential, and we have fundamentally shut them down in so many parts of our country, of our culture here right now, especially places like where I live out in a rural town. There's, you know, I think we're better than some, but those spaces have just disappeared and dried up. And I don't know what people expect. I don't know what us adults think young people should be doing. Like they should absolutely be hanging out, making mistakes, getting into trouble, you know, safe trouble,
Good trouble.
good trouble. Yeah, the good kind of trouble. And especially these kids coming out of the pandemic, you know, as an educator, I'm seeing those kids that were in middle school, holy cow, during the pandemic,
Mhm.
they have to come to this understanding that it's okay to ask someone to hang out. It's scary. And it really emphasized to me what providing those spaces for them, how crucial it is, because to actually be able to sense someone's reaction in real time, not with a screen, but in the same room as you, to literally as a human being have your senses sparked by how they're reacting to you when you're asking them questions and putting yourself out there vulnerably to say, hey, you want to hang out? Like that, if they've missed that crucial part of their development, it's hard. They're struggling to get it back. They're getting it back. Thank goodness, is what I'm seeing. But they missed it. So that was that's a really extreme example of what, when we deny it to them, what winds up happening. But I'm trying to create those spaces in my classroom now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where,
tell me about that.
Well, where young musicians are able to take those risks and see reactions in real time. And I always say, like, yes, let's make mistakes together. We're all making mistakes. This is a good class to make mistakes in. And they're learning how to speak to each other and interact with each other in an entirely different context than their social studies class or their math class, or even their phys ed class, although not dissimilar. But, active listening is it's this like undervalued skill that, again, I feel I can see potentially that we haven't flexed that muscle enough.
No, I teach it to adults.
Yeah.
My trainings.
I bet you do. Oh, I would love to hear more about that. I bet you do. Yeah. Like, how do you find adults are, my
we
question
just forget,
to you would be,
we just forget that stuff. And we're not taught in school basic active listening skills, communication skills, that conflict is a part of communicating, and there's kind of a right way or better way to have conflict, and it's not the end of the world, and it's not abuse, and there are differences. And so just real basic communication, human to human stuff should be taught in school, in my opinion, more than maybe like, can you find this random country on a map even? Like, I'm just like, that's something we can look up quickly if we need to know, if we forget where Ghana is, right? We can look it up. Oh, there it is. That's right. But like, we need to be practicing
Shawna,
interacting with other
practicing.
humans, like from birth. And
Absolutely.
so you're talking about all ages spaces, and I'm thinking like the phones don't help. So in your classroom, are you like a no phones policy kind of teach, like, so that they can talk to each other?
When I was in high school, when I was teaching some high school classes, there were phones, and that was absolutely wrong. But it needs to be like a statewide thing or a district-wide thing, like that. Literally, phones are banned from the classroom. Otherwise, the kids will have them. But right now, I'm teaching mostly pre-K through sixth grade.
Oh, okay.
So most of them do not even have phones, or if they do, their teachers are able to keep them in their classroom. But the kids still show up sometimes. Rarely, though. But I feel so lucky that I get their undivided attention. And I tend to turn my big, giant Promethean board screen off as much as possible, because I know they've been staring at it all day. They've had their own individual devices. And I'm like, this is as minimal screens as possible in this classroom. I would love for them to be exposed to other musicians and other styles, and also to see themselves, identify themselves. So I certainly do show other performances, and we listen to recordings. But my emphasis is on getting them to hear their own voice within a group, and know they don't have to sing as loud as possible.
Right.
And then also get the ones that are very quiet to make a sound. And it can be, and that sometimes I'm leaning in with my, to just to hear them, the quietest ones. But, and that's great. That's, to me, that effort is just as valuable and worthy of, quote unquote, getting an A, as the student who's coming in and already knows how to harmonize naturally, and is more engaged in that sense. So making it extremely accessible is also one of my extreme accessibility. I've never actually said that before. I don't mean to make it sound like an extreme sport, but yeah, I was fortunate to have some wonderful teachers and who helped me understand what that means, what accessibility means in a music classroom.
Did you have to learn that lesson yourself growing up, like to be a piece of the puzzle instead of, I'm just thinking, as a only child, and I did theater, and I was like, everybody look at me, and then I had to realize, like, actually, it's okay if I'm just doing this tiny little noodly thing on the guitar because it's about how all the pieces fit together versus like me being some star. And I think anyone that did band or orchestra was way better. Like you just know that, you just learn that. And I never did that. I was, self-taught, just guitarist.
Oh, hi, puppy, by the way.
I know. Rosie made an appearance on the video.
Made an appearance.
Oh, thank you, Rosie.
I love your theater reference. Both of my children have done theater. My daughter's really into theater. And
sorry and congrats. No.
Right. Oh, I love it. I love it. The cliche, obviously, is there's no, what's this saying? There's no small part. There's only small actor or something. Yeah. There's no role or something. Yeah, absolutely. Like I just saw a show this weekend, this band's first performance ever. And two of them are visual artists. And I didn't know who the other musician was, but, and they, obviously they had their first show, Jitters. And I came to it again with so much openness and happiness as a music educator to see how they navigated their mistakes, how they, what parts were shining, what moments were they locked in, and so music as this conversation that we're sharing, and that at its core is the most crucial element of it that I teach, but really we're just practicing that it's this conversation we're having.
That's so beautiful. I got a question or two from the internet about y'all. Matt G, I'm not saying his last name because I don't know if I can pronounce it right, but Matt G, who is a self-proclaimed Raina Maria super fan, he said he wanted to thank you for buying him Thai food in Milwaukee that one time.
Okay.
I don't know if you know what that means or remember that.
That's awesome.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But also, he asked, what is it like to write music with the same people for over 25 years, which feels like a really big question.
Yeah. What's it like? Well, I think, when we started out, I would not say amateur. I never use that word amateur, but we were beginners, we were young musicians. And now, as older musicians, I think we have maybe more, we're definitely calmer. I think at the time, for myself, I will speak only for myself. At the time, I was really nervous about my vision, my third of that, and trying to be perfect. Maybe that's one of my selves that I can also put aside and say, no, it's okay. Perfect. The self that wants to be perfect, it's not going to be number one. So, take a break. Now I feel very happy to go deeper into, for me, wanting to show that authenticity. So I think when I was younger, I felt more frightened to be authentic. And now I feel more comfortable just trying to be that.
That's so fascinating because I feel like such a big part of your band, especially when it started, was this immediate sense of y'all having authenticity, of it being a little raw and being real, and that really appealing to people. And so you're telling me that you were trying to almost shy away from that or hide it at first?
Yeah. Being raw. I think I didn't know what to do. I think I could only do what I knew, because I'd never been, I was learning, writing and learning every song by ear. I couldn't tell you what, I knew what my 4 strings were, but I could barely tell you where notes were on the fretboard. So now that I've learned some music theory, I got my master's in music education and I understand theory, and I'm like, Oh, that's cool how that works
Oh,
together. And
that's what I
like, I
did.
mean, yeah, I can understand that a little better now.
Fascinating.
But, you don't need theory, obviously, to write music because majority of musicians in the world can't read Western music theory anyway. So, yeah. And I think I was afraid that I was inauthentic because I couldn't tell you
Oh.
how to read a chord chart or whatever. Like, I was like, oh, that makes me not a real musician.
Oh, that's a different version of authenticity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. Because y'all had more of the, no, we're just real people and we have real
Yeah.
feelings
Mm,
and also being a three piece. And so it's even more kind of stripped down. There's less jangly guitars in the way,
yeah.
just real, wow. And you were like, oh, but am I not real? Because I'm not a pro
Sure. And,
musician.
and of course, back then there were far less people that looked like me or identified like me at the music spaces, at the venues.
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's like, oh, wow. Like,
Isn't it
what world
nice
did we
now?
step into? Oh, it's so nice. And before things like Me Too movement, I really didn't believe it could happen in my lifetime. Things just felt so entrenched. And I didn't, so that was kind of like for all the messiness and the complications and the difficulties and challenges of where we are now, it's like I didn't even think we'd be in this
Mm,
space, you know, 20
yeah.
years ago. I would have said that's impossible. So, like, while I value musical education traditions and conventions, but like you have to adapt and to the challenges, you have to, if you don't have the language, if you can't write or read the language that you're living in, at least you can speak it, and it's going to sound different than anybody else
Yeah.
who's speaking it potentially because of what you heard growing up.
Yes. Yeah. And there's some
Um,
beauty in that.
absolutely. That's gosh, I mean, diversity is beautiful. Diversity
Hello.
is is our survival as a species. Any
S-
species survival.
Yes, yes. So let's get specific. The
Mhm.
last album you all put out, was that in 2017? When was that?
I think so, yeah.
2017. And so compare writing that album to this first one from 97 with these
Oof.
same people.
Yeah.
What was it like to write music?
Well, we had to get together from different parts of the country and even different parts of the world to do it this time. Whereas back
Oh,
then, with the first stuff, we were living in the same house, even.
yeah.
So it was like play all day in our basement when we weren't
Yes.
going to school,
Yes.
and on our on our breaks, like go tour as much as possible, play 200 shows a year, like all that stuff, and become that kind of music family in that sense. Now we have extended families. We each have our own extended families. So there's a different, we were coming together to support each other and our extended families at that point. So like that kind of maturity meant that I think we were like interested in sort of like almost, I don't want to, well, I haven't really thought about this very much, like how to talk about it, but kind of assigning roles in a sense. Like, oh, is this something you want to do? Do it, like as opposed to like, oh, I have to have my finger in every pudding,
Mm,
like
hmm.
so I think collaborating with other people, we all know there's a lot of compromise involved. Um, and it's like having three people cook one dish. It's going to be messy.
I'm laughing because there's five people in my band. So.
Right. I know.
If you want to hear mine and Caithlin's thoughts on Thanksgiving, check out my Patreon. This is going to be part of a bonus clip of our chat. Okay? Back to the interview. What did that stretch of time where I think you guys officially broke up, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
just like a break, but the band broke up. And then years later,
Yeah.
wrote, recorded, and released another album, and you've been kind of touring on and off since then. What did that stretch of time give you personally and musically? Like, what No, that's the end of that's the question.
That's an amazing question. Thank you for that question. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect on these times in my creative life.
Good day for it.
Yeah, exactly. That time gave me my children. That time gave me the relationship I had then with their father. There wasn't enough creativity for me during that time. I did do solo records, so that was precious as it was. But I got to be the full-time parent, which was something I always wanted to. So I learned so much, and I'm so grateful to my children and my family for what I was able to learn during that time. And now, as I reflect on it, I know how lucky I was to have all that time with them, my family and my children. And, you know, I missed being in a band. I did. And I tried to do it here and there, but it was really hard, you know, as a full-time parent to find the time for that. That's not a complaint. That's just the reality of it. You know, you can't, like, you can have it all, but at different times, sort of thing, you know, like having it all at once is really challenging. So.
Yeah. Did you feel like when you came back to writing, your approach was different because of that time without as much creativity?
Yeah, for sure. I was way more organized, way more efficient. And also way more excited, you know, to get a chance to be with, and you know, because I did things with other musicians at the time. And so I got to experience that, you know, like that joy of their generosity and experience. And I learned, you know, I had to teach myself some music technology, some recording in order to do my own things as well. So that was helpful. But, you know, like fear is always this thing like that I want to look at closely every time it pops up. Like, oh, hi, fear. Like before I used to just let it consume me, or I used to inhabit it wholly. And now I can see it as like only one part of me and say like, what is this fear really? Like, what's it stopping me from doing? Like, what's it trying to protect me from here? So, because I don't think I've ever emphasized this enough, but I was very shy. I'm very sensitive and very, very shy. So for me to actually be a front person or whatever that means, you know, with the microphone in front of my face, like it took so much effort and discipline to not want to run away and throw up. And be, you know, so scary for me.
Yeah.
And still can be. But now I know that I also find it delightful.
Right.
And it's you know, I feel delightful, full of delight when I'm doing it. So that kind of counters the fear.
When did you realize how much Rainer Maria meant to people?
I think one clear moment performing for me when I realized that Rainer Maria had an effect on people was we played what for us was a big show at the time in New York City I think it was at Bowery Ballroom. And I looked, the lights sort of swept up and I saw people in the way back just with like joy on their face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're engaged in this. Like something is resonating. And that's always also a word that's important to me. And what we're trying to do in my music classrooms is get on the same wavelength, resonating, so that the people who are going very fast up here and the people who are slow down here, we somehow slow down the fast people, speed up the slow people so that we're all on the same, you know, rhythmic pattern, wavelength, whatever you want to call it. So that definitely helped. That definitely was that moment performing. And then seeing like the huge, amazing success of bands like American Football that were our cohorts at the time, seeing how they have taken some of the essence or, you know, whatever we were sharing back then. And, you know, they've taken it to so many different stages around the world. Like, I feel a part of that. Like, you know, those were my colleagues, my friends. Like, we were in the same DIY spaces together. Like, I feel a part of that, like, happiness that it's that so many people go to it, because I know what music means to me. You know, it's that saving thing. saving grace that you can access at any point in your life in any way that is accessible to you. So I feel happy and lucky,
I'm so
that I get
glad.
to keep doing it. Yeah.
I'm so glad you feel that way because I feel like Raina Maria was such a staple. Everywhere I ever played in my bands touring, there was always a Raina Maria poster. You guys had just been there, or you're gonna go
Nice.
there, or like, and you just seemed like a band that everyone knew about and wanted to see, but you all were still accessible. Like I felt like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it felt like you were a band that was like big to us in the scene, but that we could still go see in a basement at any time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Why
Yeah.
have we never met? Like, not, I would say
Oh, I don't
never
know.
met, but we have kind of met. But why have we, like, how did that happen? I mean, we did. Was lucky to get to see you play in New York,
You did?
at least once or twice. Yeah, right.
Seriously? War on Women?
Yeah,
You
with
saw War on
Susie.
Women
I think I
play?
was with Susie. I was with
Yeah, because you saw
Pogo.
Pogo.
Yep.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so
Yeah.
Jawbreaker, the Jawbreaker
Yes.
tour.
Hmm.
Yes, well, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
So I was lucky.
Oh, that's
Maybe
cool.
because you're
I didn't know
just
that.
maybe, yeah, maybe because I'm a little older or something. Then we
Maybe. I
didn't.
think, my band at the time, maybe, let's see, I was in a band called Fair Verona in
Hmm.
Nashville that toured, but was, not same
Yeah.
circle, not really
Hmm.
like that. And then a Vec, but that was like early 2000s, and that was out of Baltimore. And so it
So we were
just,
playing the same venues, but not on
yeah,
the same bill, kind of thing.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. But
That would make
like,
sense.
but you were in my world because everyone had one of your shirts or a
Aw.
poster of you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Cool.
but yeah, I think the kind of music I played made us more adjacent, and we wouldn't have been on the same bill necessarily, unless it was a really cool show. Because my favorite shows were the ones that mixed everything up genre
Same.
wise. You know.
Same.
Do you actually, that's speaking of like, do you feel like emo is the right label for Raina Maria? How do you consider yourselves?
Well, I would always qualify it as second wave emo. So like, so yes, I was a huge Fugazi fan, and I knew that they came where they had come from, Rites of Spring, but I really didn't know at the time that we were being put into that until we already
Hmm.
had been that category. And then when like the next waves of emo happened, and I thought, oh wow, emo's big now. That must mean like people will hear us. No, absolutely the opposite. And so, clearly this idea that sometimes happens, that what we call the pioneers of a genre or whatever
Yeah.
are often not the ones that have the most quote unquote commercial success.
Yeah.
Like that, that's par for the course. Like I always sought out the bands that were tiny,
Mm.
did not, because they were doing something that wasn't appealing to everybody.
Hmm.
And why do I seek that out? I don't know. That's just who I am in this go around. So that's just what appeals to me. So I always was like, the on the alternative side of things or whatever.
Yeah.
The micro instead of the macro. Although I love huge things that appeal to people too. I was just listening to Sade
Sure.
this morning.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah. I wanted to ask you what this Stolen Land was written in response to at that
Oh,
time.
okay. Yeah.
If you don't mind asking, you don't
Well,
have
there's a
to.
whole But Her Lyrics episode on it if you want to
Oh,
listen
no way,
to
really?
that.
Okay, I gotta find that one then.
Okay, yep, you guessed it. This will also be part of that bonus clip I was talking about earlier. Head to the Patreon, listen to all of it there. It's all connected. It's a very cool part of the interview that I just want to share with the patrons. So there you go. What are your favorite Raina Maria songs to play live now? And is it different than your favorites to play back in the day? The theme of this whole
Yeah.
episode, I feel like, is just like time, right? Like
Uh-huh.
hindsight, and like because it's
Sure.
just so fascinating to me.
Mm.
Your run of having a bunch of albums, breaking up for years, coming back, and then even now there's been a lot of time since you reunited, and you probably have hindsight on that, so it's just so
Yeah.
interesting.
For sure. For me, for to think about it is definitely interesting, challenging. Me, I like to be challenged. Well, I think when we open up our set, or we did, for instance, at the Best Friends Forever Fest with like three of the key songs to understanding Ryan Maria for me were our Artificial Light,
Okay.
Planetary, and Broken Radio. And the way that those three fit together melodically and lyrically and rhythmically just set me up for the whole rest of the set. And it always has, I think, in a way, but we didn't come to it until a little bit later, maybe, putting those three together like that. But there's something about the little moments of when the drums have cut out and we're just maybe hearing stick clicks between songs, for instance, and I just hear guitar or guitar intro, or when the drums kick into, like they're Williams hitting other cymbals or whatever, like he's going from the ride to the crash, whatever, that it just somehow it transports me. So that's the other worldly sort of ethereal, spiritual connection that I get to it all. But only if those three are played in a row.
That's the magic spell.
It is
the magic
totally.
Combination.
Totally. So back in the day, the song at the very first shows, the song that made the most sense to me on stage was I Love You Too. And one of the first times we played it, when we were quote unquote on the road, I think we just went down to University of Illinois, which was not so far from Madison. We were like in
You're
Champaign.
on tour. We're on tour. We're
right. And we had a bunch of our, what I still call my colleagues now. But yeah, we had a bunch of other bands that we knew around in the crowd. The whole set I felt really shaky. And then I Love You Too, we played it. And I saw the transformation. People were like, that's the song. That's the song we get completely.
Yeah.
You're singing that song to me, like here in the crowd. And I'm giving you a nod, like, yep, that's the song. And so I could see it on their faces. Afterwards, people came up afterwards to talk to us about that song. And I was like, yeah, I Love You Too. That's a really unusual, as far as the way it's constructed and came together. Very pure, honest. I don't mean pure as in like, but like purely us.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of song. Like very, for me, as an inexperienced musician, I was like writing melodic bass lines without really understanding how the bass was part of the groove machine at the time. Like, because like I said, I'd never been trained. That was the song, I think, back then. We don't play that one very much.
Oh, did you find back then that you were a band that people needed to hear a specific song for it to click, to understand what your band was about? Was that consistent at a lot of shows, or do you feel like right away people got what you were about? I've been in bands where they do not understand us right away. and something needs to click and they go, oh, okay. And then the rest of the set, they're like, I see.
Yeah. Well, I think much like a conversation you could have from the stage, there's some bands that I love that are, the timbre of the song or whatever, the feeling of each song from song to song is linked. So, and it, you sort of, everything is sort of moving along together. Right. And so you either get at you can jump on the understanding of it at some point or not. But I think for Ryan Maria's songs, because Kaya and I, as the lyricists, were coming from poetry classes, coming from being students of poetry, we sort of saw each song as its own little poem in a sense. So they could have very different flavors, very different things. So I really understood that, like, not everybody's going to like that song. I think a lot of people like this song. Like, I really...
But here's another one for you.
Sure, yeah. Like, you don't have to like them all. It's a book of poetry. You want to flip through to your favorites. I get it. Like, sort of tune out during other ones. But there could be, like, the one line, that you might hook into. But yeah, in a sense, like, that's we didn't really separate we were mining our poems for our lyrics. So that's why that kind of worked, I thought.
Okay, I have a fun question.
Mm-hmm.
Why back then were we all spelling your YR instead of YOUR? Why is that such
You're,
a thing? I did
uh,
that all the time. Where
yeah,
did we get that? Where did
that's a
that
good
come
question.
from?
That is a really good question. I mean, I think the first musician that I was aware of that was sort of abbreviating things in like a text message sense was maybe Prince.
Right?
Like,
But he
sort of
was
groundbreaking.
extreme. That's like very
Yeah,
different. I feel like we
yeah,
we weren't doing that.
right.
Um, but yeah, what
I think he gave permission though. I don't know. Like,
interesting. Right.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, well, we don't have to spell out the whole name. I think I would ask Kaya that question. Now I'm going to ask Kaya that question later, and I'll send you a
Okay.
little response
You
because
you
I
email
know
me.
Kaya will remember it probably.
Because it was
Again,
a
it's like a
thing.
poetic device, probably.
Maybe so. Maybe so. All right. You let me know. I'll put it at the end of the episode and
Okay.
and the outro. Before I stop recording, is there anything that you want, wish I would have asked, or anything you want to talk about that we didn't?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, I always love talking about how to make music accessible,
Mm.
as an educator. Um, and there are systems that people are devising and there are systems that already exist, where you can, for instance, put colored stickers on instruments to help neurodivergent music students with neurodivergency or disability or accept any kind of exceptionality. So, if you're a parent or know a parent of or know somebody who you think could benefit from music study and practice, but you're worried that the instruments aren't accessible or that music theory isn't accessible, like there are systems out there and soft technology that's available. And as an educator, I see that the students who maybe are the most challenging in other classrooms for whatever reason for traditional public education
Mm-hmm.
come into the music room and just kick ass and thrive
I
and their
believe it.
voice is heard. So, we need to create more accessibility, obviously. We're not even close to having full access, but it's starting. So look to other places also, other countries like Scotland and Finland have been
Oh,
pioneers in that field.
maybe I'll get you. Maybe you can email me a bunch of
Yeah,
different stuff, different resources, different
sure.
ideas, places to go, places to learn, and I'll put
Uh-huh.
that in the show notes.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, Caitlin, tell people if there's any resources or cool shit you want them to check out, and then how can they find you?
Mm, resources, cool stuff. I have so many resources now. I'm so fortunate. If you're in the New York City area, check out JAM, Just Accessible Music. My mentor, Dr. Kim McCord, is the director of it's a music school, but it's a research center also. So it's making music accessible to people of all ages and abilities. You can be a child or an adult, and there are music teachers there for you and music classes and all kinds of things. So it's in Queens. Then there's also online SOS, Sounds of Saving, which is a music and mental health nonprofit. And I'm an advisor, or, I help them with their educational content, but it's creating resources and curriculum to support young people's mental health with music. A little worried about funding for education and music education for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I'm worried about a
Well,
few
more than a
things.
little worried, because I
Yeah.
can see, as Noam Chomsky talks about, like, how do you destroy something? Well, you defund it so that people don't think it works anymore, and then you
Mm-hmm.
privatize it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're definitely heading down that path. And so I'm one of those people that believes there should be no private schools at all, maybe very few, more like a Finland model where, everyone is given free education at all points in their life, including higher degrees. And there is funding for it. We just misdirect that money.
Yeah.
So let's keep talking, obviously, and organizing and protecting and challenging. I would say keep listening to Shawna's podcasts and other people who are having these conversations, because we're not alone. We have the power. We do have the power collectively. We just have to figure out how to access it. They've weakened our muscle of how to flex that muscle of solidarity, union building.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. But it's there. That muscle's there.
Yeah.
So let's start using it.
Where can people find you online?
RyanMaria.com. I mean, we have some shows maybe coming up next year. Hint, hint. And also Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I'm actually releasing my next solo record in March.
Oh, that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. I look forward to hearing that.
Yeah, on Skeletal Lightning. Hi, Skeletal Lightning. Love you.
Caithlin De Marrais, thank you so much for joining me on But Her Lyrics.
You're the best, Shawna. Thank you.
Oh, and I got the name right at the end?
Yes.
Phew! Keep listening to hear Raina Maria's song, Rain Your Hand, in full. You can support this podcast by liking my YouTube channel and sharing, subscribing, and reviewing But Her Lyrics wherever you get your podcasts. It's free and it helps. To find episode transcripts or to find out more about what I do, my book, my trainings, my intimacy coordination, my Patreon, just head to shaunapotter.com. And to learn about all things War on Women, head to our Linktree, linktree.ee/War on Women. We do have shows coming up all over the US and Canada. We're coming back to Europe next summer, so please come say hi if I'm coming to your town. Grab tickets now. You can also find me on Cameo and request me to talk about whatever random shit you want me to. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my Patreon and tell me who I should interview next. Thank you so much for listening, and, land back.